Primož?
Ja.
Lahko začneš čez 10 sekund.
Super, hvala lepa. Prosil bi vam, da vsi izklopite mikrofone.
We can start in 10 seconds and can you all please switch off your microphones?
Torej, spoštovane in spoštovani, lepo vas pozdravljam na današnji predstavitvi zbornika demografske.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to today's presentation of the publication Demographic Changes in Slovenia and Europe. This is this little book. We can't hear the speaker. We can't hear the speaker, unfortunately.
Zdaj je boljše?
Yes, we can hear the speaker again. So the publication which we are presenting today is a result of cooperation between the Anton Korošec Institute and the Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies in Brussels. This is a continuation of our initial first joint project, which we held last summer in our beautiful town of Ankaran in Slovenia. Now, this book is written in 2 languages, twice 78 pages, and it will be available in all Slovenian libraries. We're also going to send the publication to Slovenian and European decision makers. Some issues will also be available free of charge at our institute, the Anton Korošec Institute and the Martens Center in Brussels. Now, demography, as we all know, is not only a problem of the elderly. It is a problem of all generations, of all people. Therefore, we have invited representatives of various generations and statuses to help us prepare the papers. The youth, the elderly, students, university professors, journalists, and decision makers. Our intention is to bring together a wide variety of views and solutions of the topics that will create and that will have an impact on our future. Now, I myself come from a big family, which until recently was deemed to be old-fashioned, something to be even ashamed of. As a society, we have learned to accept diversity. Those who think differently, same-sex unions, many different lifestyles, which in the past were not accepted in majority. I myself had no problems accepting different lifestyles. However, I do have problems with not accepting what is biologically normal, the biological normalcies. And this is a prerequisite for the survival of the Slovenian and other European nations. Now, in the last decade, we have been discussing accepting diversity. In this decade, we need to ask ourselves a very different questions. Are we as a society mature enough to prevent the brain drain, the drain of young people, those who believe they do not have the necessary preconditions to have a family and to settle in their own countries. Now, Europe and the majority of the world is still by the young people seen as heaven on earth. Now, let's be frank. We are living in a relatively peaceful period with a high level of social security, with an abundance of beautiful natural conditions. It is up to us to both protect and strengthen as well as keep all that we have around us. It is up to us to distribute what we have so that this space we are living in will be heaven on earth for all of us. I would like to welcome all speakers, all contributors of papers in the publications we are presenting here today. And I will invite them to present their views of demographic changes as one of the biggest challenges in Europe. I would like to first welcome Franz Bogovic, MAP of the Slovenian People's Party, the EPP, Monika Kirbiš-Roys of the Government Office for Development and European Cohesion Policy, State Secretary, Sandra Pasaric, a project assistant from the Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies, Mr. Marian Podobnik, president of the Slovenian People's Party, and Professor Dr. Andrej Umek, president of the Expert Council of the INAC Institute. Now, at our institute, we have been also delighted to see that our work, our book, has been noticed by the Vice President of the European Commission, Commissioner for Democracy and Demography, Mrs. Dubravka Šuica, and she has explicitly asked us to share with her the outcomes, the conclusions of today's event. And we are in particular delighted and honored to have amongst us Mr. Tomi Huhtanen, the Executive Director of the Wilfried Martens Center. Our institute, the Anton Korošec Institute, is the youngest child, if you will, of the Martens Center. We are making the Martens Center younger. And our first project has been and still is how to tackle these negative demographic trends, how to make Europe younger. Mr. Huhtanen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Primož. Hello, everybody. It's indeed a great pleasure to be here with you. First of all, I would like to thank INAC for making this event possible. Primož, Jelševar for excellent job. You say young, I say dynamic. I would like to thank President Marian Podobnik for joining our conference. Frank Bogovic, our good friends, member of the European Parliament from here in Brussels. Nice to see you. State Secretary Royce, great honor to have you here. And old friends, Andrej Umek, since many decades, nice to see you. And Anne Hermans, it's good to be with the family. And also, so dober dan for all of you. But I will also want to thank Susanne Krause and Sandra Pasaric, Sandra from Martens Center for making all this practically happen. You know, as Primož mentioned, it was not easy and never. Our idea was to have it in multiple meetings, but you know, then came the corona and we have to modify. But then indeed, as mentioned, the publication is great and looking good, and the debate is very important. So about the demographic change and age in Europe. Actually, this is not a new debate. It's actually a debate which has existed already a couple of decades. I remember in the beginning of 2000, you know, also here in Brussels, it was one of the, 3 to 5 main topics on economics, age in Europe, how shall we deal, what are the impact, and so. But then what happened is 2007 and 2008, the big financial and economic crisis, and we were all worried about how will the euro survive, will the EU survive. Many countries had a big hit economically, and we have been in recovery. And now again, as we would be, you know, we were about to get to the more long-term issues. We have corona and huge economic impact, etc., etc. But what is happening, as Primož already mentioned, you know, the impact of demographic change is already here. Age in Europe is already reality. Basically, the problem can be articulated in many ways, but the main issue there is a dependency ratio. Apart from population dropping, there's the issue that less and less people are securing the welfare of everybody. The dependency ratio should be 2.0 in ideal world, and the population would keep the same. But in Europe, it is not. And also we see that this is a global phenomenon, so the birth rates are decreasing. Yes, many politics and policies have been implemented in order to make the situation better, more support for the young families, flexibility, etc., etc. But unfortunately, we have not seen really a breakthrough in this. The numbers are declining, and as we can see already now with the corona, the situation is not getting better for the young people. There's various reasons why this is not happening, or why birth of children is getting later, and there will be less. As also referred in the publication, you have various aspects. Of course, the economic and security. People, if 2-3 decades ago in the very surveys, you could see that young people were quite positive, optimistic about their future. This is not the case today. So that's a big factor where, of course, governments try to help in providing different support. But there is also, as kind of Primož was kind of hinting, there's also this value aspect. That if you look to different surveys and ask, you can see that, for example, the generation, let's say 20, 30 years old, there is a new debate which didn't exist nor in North Europe or in South Europe, let's say some decades ago, with the young people asking themselves, do I want to be a parent? Do I want? So that basic question, which I would claim, at least when I was young, okay, that was only a couple ago, that our generation, I think we were quite modern, but that this discussion didn't exist, and not only in Northern Europe but all around. I think the model what young people did see was really, okay, we are going to have some fun, we are going to educate ourselves, then we are going to find somebody hopefully and make a family, and that this discourse is different. And also there's this real, if you speak and look at different surveys about young people, especially now, for them, this, for example, the whole concern about the future of the planet is a real argument for when they plan when they plan their families. This is really, for them, the climate change is an argument for not having babies. So this is, but okay, the discussion will go more deep into this debate. But what does it mean in day-to-day politics and policy making? For first of all, I have seen during this last year, couple of decades, from very north to very south of Europe, where politicians try to address this issue politically for young people in different ways, like saying that young people, maybe you would consider having children, etc., etc. But politically, it's total no-go. Always, it is very difficult to make that a political argument in the future, because there's a huge reaction from different segments of the society. So, as mentioned already by Primož, it's a very, very difficult discussion. However, I'm here just to give the opening word, so I don't go so much in substance, but maybe one point I make, and maybe Ann Hermans, who is our, is later in the conference our speaker, can resonate on that. I think realistically, of course, we have to make policies and support young families and all of that. But it is a big value debate, and how to manage that. That's a big question which we will discuss also today. But realistically, and soon I will conclude, realistically, the only solution so that this aging demographic change doesn't make the public finances in European states to collapse, the only possibility is to make sure that enough big part of the population is in the workforce. So that concerns the very young people who are entering the workforce, and then the seniors. And of course, with young people, there's some things what you can do, but there's a limit to it. Okay, you can create a situation that people, young people, rather than being close to 30, entering the workforce, they do rather, a little bit before they are mid-25. But there's a limit to it. Where we will see the accent, I think the future is the debate, and it's not politically easy, is this that we need to make, the seniors, we have to accept that the future economies will not work if we don't manage to create economy where senior people have a place. So in short, you have already a situation where a big part, so my generation, you who are in the workforce, the big part of our populations are already, one of the main concerns, economic concerns, is how do I survive when I'm in pension? This is a major concern, and it's also proven by studies. Eurostat a couple months ago created a study where it predicted that there's a big danger that a big part of the all people will in Europe will fall to poverty because of the demographic change and its stress to the public finances. So all in all, it means that in the future, being in pension is, first of all, obviously pension age will be later, but also it means that for many people, this being in pensions is not anymore leisure time. It means that somehow you will be working, And of course, the problem for politicians is to formulate. We are just think tankers, but for politicians is to formulate this message. But I conclude with up note. So this doesn't need to be only bad news, because we see that many studies show that the people who are longer in workforce, they are happier. They are more dynamic, they are more active, and they live longer. Of course, this depends. If you are in a hard work, physical work, obviously, if you're close to 70, it doesn't fly. But luckily, already in Europe, most of the big part of the jobs are not like that. So there's this positive aspect. So I would conclude that I think what we are looking in this demographic change debate is this era of super seniors, which want to say that I think in the future society, seniors and their input to the workforce and to labor and to economy, their role increase. Although if we don't manage to do that, but it doesn't come for free, it doesn't come for, as taken, and we have to work on that. But of course, to go, this is only one part of the debate, and I don't want to take more of your time. Once again, thank you for Inak, thanks for the panelists, thanks for the participants, and I'm very privileged and honored to have participated in such a high-level discussion. So Primož, thank you very much. Thank you, friends. And I'm looking forward for the very, very interesting debate. Thank you.
Hvala gospodu Tomiju Huhtanenu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tomi Huhtanen, the director of the Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies, for this very interesting introduction. And of course, thank you for accepting our invitation to attend the discussion today, and thank you for inviting us to further talks. Yes, we also believe we need to discuss the issues that are most pressing, not only for the elderly, but also for young people who have very similar problems, as we have stated in our publication. The first speaker, author of papers for the publication today is Mr. Franz Bogovič, the MEP on behalf of the European People's Party. Primož, thank you very much, and good afternoon to all participants at today's event presenting this very important publication. I would like to also welcome all co-authors, and a special thanks and special welcome goes to my friend Tomi Huhtanen from the Martens Center, and also to Mrs. Hermans, President of the European Seniors Union within the EPP. We have discussed the topics which are central to today's discussion with her many times. I enjoyed very much participating in preparing a paper for this publication, because it gave me an opportunity to go through the situation we are witnessing today and to also propose solutions for the future. Demographic change is one of the mega trends that we are witnessing, in addition to climate change, digitization. So demographic changes are going also hand in hand with urbanization, excessive use of energy. Economic growth has been moving into urban areas. We are also witnessing migration from rural areas into urban areas, from one region to other regions, and also between countries. Consequently, we are seeing phenomena such as a lack of labor force, issues and problems witnessed by healthcare systems, then young people leaving rural areas. The world is moving towards urban areas. The global population growth in less developed countries has been increasing greatly, and by 2015 we will see about 8 billion people, of which 5 billion will be living in large metropolitan areas. Only about 200 to 300 million people will be living in rural areas. On the other side, large-scale urbanization is foreseen. In Europe, we are seeing generally the big issue of a declining birth rate. The average would be between 2 to 3 children per woman in some countries to only 1.3 in some other countries in Europe. This is a huge problem. Adding to that is the migration of working population. And we are seeing several trends here. For instance, Germany is one of the countries that has a large-scale immigration, so people moving into Germany. In 2017, the rate of immigration to Germany was very high. On the other hand, we have, for instance, Poland, from which people have been moving, and then we have countries like Ukraine, where immigration has also been large scale. Adding to that are Romania, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, where the population rate is decreasing, and countries such as Romania and Bulgaria are already witnessing an emigration rate of up to 30 and even 45%. So some countries, some areas of some countries are already empty, so to say, because people are moving out, they are emigrating. And especially young people, as we have heard, have become very mobile. Instead of having a brain drain, we would like to turn this into a brain circulation. There are several programs available promoting brain circulation. And these programs offer young people the possibility to spend some time in other countries, but then after they have done their studies or traineeship, coming back to their own countries. What do we need for the future to resolve this issue? We need a proper family policy. We need policies facilitating young people to have larger families. We need appropriate cohesion and agricultural policies because they offer the instrument of solidarity through net payers by some countries. Proper cohesion and agricultural policies contribute to keeping people in their areas. These policies must be effective, that is cohesion and agricultural policies. Last but not least, what we need is measures arising from programs for rural areas, the Smart Villages program that I have been promoting. We need a more improved area of rural parts of countries that will keep and attract young people there. One of the main lessons we have learned throughout the years is solidarity. We need to promote solidarity, intergenerational solidarity, in terms of long-term care, by means of which we take better care for the senior generation. And on the other hand, we need to create more jobs in rural areas, which find it more difficult to get over various crises. It is our obligation to work in our own areas, firstly, by providing proposals, as we did in the book we are talking about here today, and later on by various measures and actions to promote what I have been talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Franci, for the presentation of the trends in Europe and the policies showing how Europe is tackling these issues and challenges. There are some policies that are contributing to us having wider and broader possibilities for that. And now I would like to give the floor to Monica Kirbiš-Rois, State Secretary of Government Office for Development and European Cohesion Policy. She's considered one of the top experts in Slovenia with regard to drawing of European funds. Monica is going to present the situation in Slovenia, which she helped create. Monica, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Primož, for giving me the floor. Good afternoon from our office. Slovenia is one of the rapidly aging countries. The economic projections show that by 2050, Slovenia will be among the countries with the oldest population in the European Union. And to be honest, in these days when we are preparing and drawing up the key documents, the European Commission is exerting pressure on us, which means that we really need to implement reforms in many areas, which in the past decades Slovenia has not done. The aging of the population is for Slovenia one of the key long-term challenges that shows and is reflected in many areas such as labor market, education, social and health care, and in particular long-term care, and the housing area, and many others. All of these areas were therefore included in the drawing up of the documents for the drawing up of European funds in the next decade, that is the Recovery and Resilience Plan at the national level, and the multi-annual financial framework of the cohesion policy up to 2027. And there's also an incentive, REACT-EU, that is already being implemented as part of the cohesion policy between 2014 and 2020. We already issued the first decision and approved the first project in the field of healthcare, that is the new department of the pulmonary hospital within the scope of the University Clinical Center in Maribor. That's the pulmonary department. And the renovation of it, because it was built in the time after the Second World War. The government also adopted two operational measures in this area in 2020. The government established the Government Office of Demography and the National Demographic Fund. These two will be very important in combination with the pension reform. As far as rural areas are concerned, as Mr. Bogovic mentioned, the EU has been facing the outflow of young people. In Slovenia, however, we don't have this problem, at least it's not that much expressed, but we need to adopt measures in order to prevent that from happening. As far as sustainability of public finance is concerned, we will need to be very careful, as was mentioned by the previous speaker, because the aging population also represents a large burden to the pension budget. With regard to the development documents, we can say that within the scope of the Recovery and Resilience Plan, Slovenia will have 5.2 billion euros available by 2026, of which 1.6 billion will be non-refundable grants and 3.6 billion euro in refundable grants. Within the scope of the cohesion policy, there will be 2.9 billion euro of non-refundable funds. As far as investments are concerned, we know that the majority of these funds need to be allocated to everything green and digital, which means we will direct 37 or 20% of European funds from the Recovery and Resilience Plan, respectively. And the majority or a large portion of the funds will be allocated to the recovery and resilience of the economy and the labor market, and also to the local communities for the construction of critical infrastructure. As far as the reform is concerned that needs to be implemented, they refer mainly to the labor market, to the inclusive labor market, long-term care, and healthcare. First and foremost, it is expected of us to prolong the working life age. And we are also expected to ensure high quality and dignified jobs more than they're available now. With regard to the skills and knowledge, we will need to focus on lifelong learning more, also when it comes to seniors and into health and safety at work and the sustainability of public finance. With regard to long-term care, here we are going to have to adopt the Long-Term Care Act. And we are going to present the timeline of the adoption of the Act in order to ensure the public finance availability of the system. As for investments within the Recovery and Resilience Plan, new investments are foreseen for the homes for the elderly, for nursing hospitals, and investment in human resources, in healthcare personnel. We should not forget about that when it comes to long-term care and healthcare. In healthcare, the health reform has been expected for quite some time. We are going to, or we will need to strengthen primary health care. We are going to need to invest into more personnel, into nurses, and as we know that there's a lot of lack of healthcare staff. If the reforms are implemented well, then we are going to foresee also the investments into the 2 clinics for infectious diseases in Maribor and in Ljubljana, and in other healthcare infrastructure. As I mentioned before, the timeline. I would like to present the timeline so that you can see when these documents will be actually drawn up and ready. On the part of the European Union, the legal basis is there. The regulation on the mechanism of recovery and resilience is available, is in place, and now we are in the horizontal coordination phase. And we expect that on the 30th of April, it will be submitted for further consolidation and coordination and approval. And then in May, we expect it will be adopted and the documents will then be able to be submitted to the European Commission. The implementation is about to start following the approval by the European Commission. Thank you very much. That much on my part. Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Monica Kirbiš-Roos, for this encouraging information on the measures that are ahead of us. And thank you for your analysis of the situation.
The next speaker is Mrs. Sandra Pasaric, Project Assistant at the Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies. She has been very helpful as a liaison officer between INAC and the Martens Center. And she's also an author of a paper on Croatia and demographic changes in her country, the neighboring country, or one of the neighboring countries of
Добрий
Slovenia.
день. Hvala, Primož. Thank you so much, Primož, for handing me over the word. I will speak in English. Dear Mr. Franz Bonkovic, a member of the European Parliament and member of the Slovenian People's Party, dear Mr. Marian Podobnik, President of Slovenian People's Party, State Secretary Monika Kirbuš-Rojs, dear other co-authors that unfortunately were not available to join us in today and also contributed to this publication, Demographic Changes in Slovenia and Europe. And dear Primož again, dear Tommy Huhtanen, Director of Wilfried Martens Center, and also dear all viewers that is joining us online. Once upon a time, I heard a saying that goes something like, as a student, you have energy and you have time, but you don't have money to do things. And as you grow and you become a young professional and you start to work, you go to a professional position, you have a professional position, you still have the energy. Suddenly you have the money, but you lack the time to undertake things. And then as a pensionist, as a senior, you suddenly have all the time you need. You might have money, but you don't have the energy. Unfortunately, the last about the seniors having the money and the material capacity, this unfortunately we can also see even in our European Union is not so true, and it's varying from one member state to another member state. So I have had also some looks and some checks on the Eurostat, and really you can see that the pensionists, they are indeed in the European Union, they're varying from one member state from another member state, and there is a big difference from women and men, and this is very, very unfortunate. Why I'm starting my discourse with this, because last week, as Primož already mentioned, we were invited by Ms. Ann Hermans, who I also greet in this very moment, the president of the European Seniors Union. They held a very interesting conference where also Dubravka Šuica, Croatian Commissioner for Demography and Democracy, was held a keynote speech. They also addressed the importance of our seniors in the European Union and also in general of the aging European population. In my article that I wrote for the publication that we are now presenting, that is titled Croatia, Deserted Island Under the European Sky, Migration Flows from and Within Croatia and Their Social Impacts. I've called the title Croatia, Deserted Island because I remember that when Croatia became the member of the European Union 7 years ago in 2013, everybody said the EU is richer for 1,000 islands. To be correct, the EU became richer for 718 islands, 389 islets, and 78 reefs. But Croatia itself became poorer of its citizens, meaning that more than 200,000 Croatians have emigrated, which corresponds to 5% of the whole population of Croatia. We are only around 4 million people. And in 2013, when borders suddenly opened within the EU, something logical happened, something that also happened before, and something that also MEP Franz Bogovic mentioned earlier. The countries, the population from the Eastern European countries and Southeastern European countries moved to the West. In Croatian case, some 50% of emigrants moved to Germany. They also moved to Ireland, and they also moved to Austria. In my article, in my publication, I have divided the article in 3 parts. So first, I have been explaining a little bit Croatia as a traditionally emigrant country. So emigration is nothing new. We have had it before during the world wars, the first and the second. We also had in the Homeland War in the 90s, and we had it now with opening, so to say, of the EU borders. And just to give you some numbers, short numbers, if you compare Croatia's population, if you compare emigration between 2009 and 2015. In 2009, 1,472 Croatians emigrated, and in 2015, 17,945 people emigrated from Croatia. So you can really see that the numbers arose. The statistics, they're also not being precise, because from one side, a lot of Croatians who move out to another country, to another EU member state, they tend not to give up on their home address, because they're thinking this is only temporary, we are going to come back. But if you compare the data with, let's say, Germany's national statistics, you can see that a lot more Croatians are emigrated to Germany than it can be seen in the Croatian official statistics. Also, I have touched upon a little bit on internal migration within borders of Croatia in my article, because this is also something that is very important. Emigration is not happening only across the borders, only externally, it also happens internally. Croatia is a country that is very diverse. We have from a sea, Adriatic Sea, to mountains. So it is logically to see that to see a natural trend of migrating from more rural areas to the cities, such as Zagreb, for example, which is the biggest net receiver, so to say, of migrants in Croatia. Also, Croatia has 20 counties and one capital, which is Zagreb, Grad Zagreb. And you can see that out of 21 counties in Croatia, 15 counties have experienced negative trends in migration, meaning that the citizens have moved out of the country or to bigger cities. Also, the most affected areas are obviously rural areas such as Slovenia, Croatia's eastern region, and also a lot of islands with schools being closed and so on. Also, I have touched upon social impacts of migration. This is also something that I have began my discourse on the beginning, talking about the aging population and so on. So Europe is today the destination of every third immigrant in the world. So if you see that sometimes, obviously it can bring positive changes into a country where a migrant moves, but also it presents obviously a big problem for the origin country, especially when it comes to the brain drain. So brain drain is something everybody talks about, but something that really affects economies. It is also affecting a lot of my home country, Croatia. And at the beginning, even though that in the short term, migration can bring some positive, so to say, impacts on different social dimensions, such as employment rate, because suddenly an employment rate in one country can significantly go down, the numbers can go down, but in the end, there are a lot of negative consequences. So brain drain has a medium and long-term negative consequence of possible disruption in the labor market, and also destabilization of health, social and pension systems due to the expected loss of fiscal and tax base. Also, what is very interesting to see that again, the most of the migrants are women and people between 20 and 44 years old, meaning workforce that is needed for a country that goes on, for a country that depends on the whole economic system. And also in Croatia, there is another significant problem, but now due to the coronavirus and due to the pandemic, also other member states have been experiencing it, and it's the brain drain and lack of staff and lack of personnel in the health sector. So in Croatia, there is an estimation that around 525 doctors left Croatia between 2013 and 2016 in the period of 3 years, which is equivalent to total numbers of doctors working in hospitals in Osijek and Rijeka, two of the largest hospitals in Croatia. So meaning that 2 whole hospitals have been left of doctors. So those were some of the social impacts. I'm sure that as we go more into the debate, we are going to touch upon some solutions. I cannot agree more with Monica Kirbeš-Royce, the State Secretary of Slovenia, and with the solutions that she proposed. The only that I can say is that the solution needs to come, and the changes, they need to come now, because we are seeing that this is whole like a domino effect, aging, birth rates, unemployment, brain drain, everything is connected. Hence, the change has to come now. And also the change has to be very, very comprehensive. It has to go into every single aspect of life, because migrants and European citizens, they're not migrating from one EU member state to another, not anymore because of salary. This is what everybody originally thinks. And there are a lot of studies that has been showing that high living standards are also important, that also the working institutions, the functioning of the institutions, the freedom of speech and so on is also very important in a everyday life of the European citizens. Hence, the change has to come now and has to be comprehensive and has to touch upon every single aspect of our daily life. Thank you. Hvala.
Hvala lepa, Sandra.
Thank you very much, Sandra, for this excellent presentation. I have to say that at our institute, we are looking forward to our cooperation in the future in such a way that it will bring very interesting results. It's a great honor to me that I can give the floor now to Mr. Marian Podobnik, President of the Slovenian People's Party. Together with a colleague, Mr. Furlan, they devoted to the issue of resolution of the housing problems of the elderly in a very constructive and innovative way. Thank you very much, Primož. And I would like to wish good afternoon and a heartfelt welcome to the High representatives from the European Union. And first and foremost, I would like to congratulate the Institute and the Martens Center for preparation, for drawing up this publication. And Mr. Drago Čepar, special thanks go to you, because many years ago you started pointing out that this would be a crucial problem and that the solutions might come too late. Sincere thanks for your perseverance, because you instigated us to think about these things. Today there was a lot of talk about fertility rate or birth rate. My wife and I, we have 6 children, and whoever has this possibility, I warmly welcome this experience. I warmly recommend this experience. This is a particularly nice way of living. Why is that so? Up to 2 or 3 children, you are trying to organize your time. This is for work, this is for family, and this is for your free time. And then suddenly there's no time for anything when there are 4 or 5 children. But then you find that you have much more time for certain things than you had when you had only 1 child. It is a demanding job. However, large families bring a lot of joy and a lot of beautiful things. As we said, Boštjan Furlan and I responded to the invitation, and we approached the topic of the countryside as the space of an integrated or comprehensive solution to housing and residential problems facing the elderly. On the basis of identifying Slovenian needs and possibilities in Slovenia and in some other countries in the European Union, we could see that with one project, one approach, one type of financing, the government and the entire Europe can solve an important part of two complex issues. On the one hand, that's the issue of how to ensure high quality housing to the seniors, to the elderly who are increasing in numbers. And the second issue is how to engage farms in the countryside, in the rural areas, so that young people will stay there, so that the countryside will be able to attract tourists, to attract young people to stay there, and so on. Another incentive for us, for me and for Boštjan and I, was the fact that there are several projects underway in Slovenia. For instance, on smart villages and even smart silver villages. Well, in the vicinity of Zreče, in the region of Štajerska or Styria, we found an area where some projects are being drafted, are being prepared. And the concept for our project would be that it should include a complex of sheltered housing, sheltered apartments, and for the elderly who are still active to be involved in the work, or in that they would live on the surrounding farms where they could help with the work. They could, up to 5 of the elderly people could be living there and help with the farming, with the animals, and so on. Some 100 meters away from this complex of buildings where the wellness and swimming pools are, so in the vicinity, there's a home for the elderly, a retirement home and a nursing home are being constructed. What is the benefit, the advantage of such an approach? The advantage is in the possibility for the active elderly to decide to live such a way of life so that they are not a burden to their children, or because they cannot take care of a large house or an apartment. They could decide for this option, in particular so if such an option is in a beautiful environment, beautiful surroundings, with animals, with farming, and knowing that if the infirmity comes, they will know that only 100 meters away from there, there's a nursing home and a home for the elderly and a nursing hospital to take care of them, which means that they can create new social contacts and they can have a new social life in this new environment without having to move to another country or just to go to the home for the elderly. Friendships will be forged and the family can visit as well. Also, on the one hand, small and medium-sized farms who are producing food, but not to such extent that this would justify a full-time employment of a certain person, they could make use of the elderly as well. So the benefits would be mutual, and the local environment would benefit from locally produced food on those farms. Whether this project will be implemented in full or not, well, we don't know that. Certain legislative changes are necessary for that to happen. But I'm convinced that in seeking solutions that will put the respect to the human being in the foreground, the dignity of a human being. So when this will be put in the foreground, when this will become number one, sustainable farming, sustainable living will also be put in number one. Circular economy, sustainability, all this is intertwined. This is why I believe that such projects and discussions, this one today and those in the future, will contribute to the resolution of housing problems facing the elderly, that will bring options, new options for this period of life that is full of experience, where people have ample knowledge, that we will use this dimension also to help the young when they are entering the working age, and that all generations will be able to live together in harmony, and that the elderly will be able to live in that period of life a rich and full life. That much from my side, and Primož, back to you.
Thank you very much, Marian, for your excellent and interesting presentation. If there's anyone legitimately speaking about democracy, that's definitely someone with 6 children. That's not only theory, that's practice. One of the last speakers is another very practical person, our very good friend, Dr. Andrej Umek, the president of the expert council of INAC. Andrej, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Primož, for giving me the floor, and good afternoon to everyone. I have been listening very carefully to the fact that Europe is seeing, and this was mentioned by Mr. Bogovic, 3 megatrends: demographic trends, technological trends, the 4th industrial revolution, and environmental trends. I have looked into the first 2 trends, megatrends. These trends are interacting, and they are mutually influencing one another. I believe both in Slovenia and in Europe, we are going to be successful in resolving the demographic issues. We need to be successful. But even if we are, the solutions will bring their benefits in the long term, not tomorrow. Whereas the poor demographic situation has already brought its consequences today. I hope our interventions will be successful. If they are, then in the next 10, 15, 30 years, the population gap will decrease. Everyone today is forecasting a lack of human resources and is advocating the importation of human resources from other very problematic areas, generally belonging to other civilization circles, not the Western European civilizations. And that is problematic. This is opening up many questions. Now, looking at the 4th industrial revolution and what it brings, automation, artificial intelligence, digitization, well, many people forecast a decrease in the number of jobs for people, a lack of jobs for all job seekers. Various solutions are foreseen, which again, I do not think bring the right results. Shortening the working hours and working days, I am skeptical of that. Look at a young doctor. A young doctor must do a certain number of interventions or surgeries or checkups a year in order to keep their skill. The same goes for construction engineers. Look at what is happening with major construction projects in Slovenia. What are we discussing about these projects? We are seeing companies without the necessary track record and skills. And if we even shorten the working years, I do not think that will contribute to having a highly skilled labor force. Now, if, however, we choose a combination of various actions, conclusions might be very different. I have some time ago made some predictions, and I came to a conclusion that the number of working age population in Slovenia will increase by some 15 or 20%. If this is the case, we can close the gap with automation. But that opens up a completely different question. Will we have appropriately skilled people for new demands arising from the new labor market? So will human resources in the future be appropriately skilled? And here lies one of our biggest problems. What we need to do is we need to align both processes. Because of these both processes and megatrends, human resources are becoming the very key element of our future development. What we need is skilled human resources aligned or fit for the needs of the labor market. We have in the project Alliance for Youth, facilitated by Mr. Bogovic, tried to adjust skills to the needs of the labor market. We cannot simply rely on importing labor force. We might import labor force, yes, but will this labor force have appropriate skills? What we need to do is we need to resolve our problems at home in our own countries. So both processes must be managed concurrently. We need to devote more attention to human resources. Now, I only have a few more moments of time. Therefore, I will conclude by saying the following. Unfavorable demographic trends call for action, undoubtedly. We need action that will overcome and improve, reverse the negative trends. We need to mitigate and resolve those trends by technological modernization of the economy. This can alleviate and mitigate the negative demographic trends. And these mean automation, more rational use of human resources, so more streamlined, more rational use of human resources is the very aspect that we in Slovenia and indeed in entire Europe must focus on. To conclude, the most recent statistics regarding the capacity of technological development for Europe show that Europe is, in a way, disintegrating into two parts. One part that is able to make technological advancements, and the other part which does not have the necessary skilled human resources. And this is where we need to react and act, both at the Slovenian as well as the EU level. We need to take care of our human resources in order to bridge the gap brought about by the negative demographic trends. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity of speaking here.
Hvala, Andrej, za to predstavitev.
Thank you, Andrej, for this presentation of these technologically quite viable solutions. They are quite realistic. I would like to thank at this point to all the authors for excellent presentations that are a fruit of deliberations and thinking on demographic change. This project has been underway throughout 2020 until now. Many very useful contributions have been received and also published in the newspaper Slovenian. And I believe that we will attract more authors and publish their contributions in the newspaper Slovenec. And now it's a great honor that I can welcome in our midst Miss Anne Hermans, the current president of the European Seniors Union. Your visit is an excellent opportunity for us and approval, and I would like to ask you to give a brief address. Please, the floor is yours.
Se slišiva, gospa Hermans?
Can you hear us, Mrs.
Wait.
Hermans?
Yes, I hear you. And you hear me now? Yes? Do you hear me? Yes. Thank you
Yes.
very much. I am very, very sorry that you can't see me. I would like to ask Sandra, don't think that I don't have the energy. Like you said, when you are 70, you don't have the energy. Don't think that I don't have the energy, but it is the technique that fails. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like, as president of the European Seniors Union, and some of you know me already, I also had the honor of visiting already Slovenia in Ljubljana. We had a meeting together also with several associations, and during the whole time that I was president of the European Seniors Union, we were very, very happy to have good relations, stimulating relations, mutual learning experiences that we could exchange also. And we were also very glad that Mr. Bokovic was very often present when we met also with members of the parliament. That is so important, that we can share our experience, that we can share it with young people, with other generations, but also with politicians and scientists and so on. And therefore, I would like to start with congratulate you. Congratulations to the Anton Korošec Institute and to the Martens Center. I find it myself wonderful to have this initiative and to work it out, to have several people working on it so that you can present ideas and research in a whole horizon that can help us to think about this very important trend, demographic change in our society. When we look at this demographic change and this aging situation, it's not new that the European Commission, the European Union looks at aging. Already in 1993, there was a special year for older people and solidarity between generations. So the idea was there, but when you look at it over the years, the idea and the accents, it changed, and I am very, very happy that it changed, because we see it in at the international level, the World Health Association, the United Nations Association. It's not only about those who haven't no energy anymore, those of 70 and older. Not only those people have to be addressed in this whole strategy, it's about the whole society. When older people say, I want to speak out, I want to be part of society, I want to be part of society in all areas of society, then when you say, yes, of course, because human dignity, participation, autonomy is so important in my ideas, in my principle, but when you want to realize it, it asked some reactions and some answers from the whole of society, and that's important. And my feeling is that now very recently, last year in 29, for the first time, the European Union has designed a vice president, a commissioner for demography and democracy, Mrs. Suisa. It is for the first time. We asked for it already several times, but this also means that the European Union takes it for serious. Yes, we need a strategy for demography. Yes, we need to speak about aging, and not only about aging. That is one of the new points. We have to look at the life course, the whole life course. I am from profession an educationalist. So education and the whole life course is important. In my education, I learned every man, every woman has a task, has tasks during the whole life, also when you're old, when you're a child, when you're young, when you're a father, a mother, but also when you are older. Life is a gift, but it's also a task to be there for others, to build together an inclusive society, and so on. And that is, in my eyes, we have heard her some days ago. In my eyes, the new commissioner takes it for her task to look at demographic change as a call on the whole society, and to look at the life course cycle, the life course process in view of healthy aging, active aging, dignity for all, an inclusive society, and so on. And that's so important. This means also that, like Frank said at a certain moment, we need solidarity. Yes, we need solidarity. We have to learn solidarity from in families with young children and so on, because in our society, we don't realize it, but our society is so much oriented to dynamic young people, yes, but also in different sectors, young people, older people, married people, and so on and so on. And when we are all going to live in that sector, then you have to create special structures to make links between those sectors. And in our, especially in our policy areas, very often it is like that. Our different policy areas are very much segmented. They are organized in several segments, and then but we have to think it more globally. We have to think about a whole region, all people living there, and also schools, and also playgrounds for children, and also long-term care, and so on. And that is a new orientation in our society. And the first thing is, And therefore, I am very glad that you organized this meeting. The first thing is awareness. Awareness about this problem, about the different aspects, about the opportunities of every age group, but also about the problems, about the burdens, about the difficulties, and so on. And then in solidarity, such an important principle for us in Europe. In solidarity, look, how can we resolve these problems? What can we do? How can we do it? And we are glad we have to go, and that is my last reflection, we have to go towards also very practical aspects, and we can do it. There is a recovery fund. There is a fund for new initiatives and so on. And there also, it must be green, it must be digital and so on. And digitalization, access to the digital world is such a great problem for older people, for several age groups, but especially for older people. And I think that also governments and people in the second circle, in relation to the government, can help and can inspire also. How and when can we use this money so that we can organize very adequate and very useful aspect now, today, and tomorrow. And I think you have created a marvelous platform to do it. So congratulations. I wish you all the success. And I can promise you, next time you'll see me. Thank you very much.
Hvala, gospe Ann Hermans.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ann Hermans. Once again, we are so grateful to have you with us here today and to hear your thoughts. An image tells more than 1,000 words, goes the saying. We have not seen you, but we have listened to you very, very carefully. I have listened to your words of wisdom, and without any problems, I have also been able to draw in my head a beautiful picture of you because of your wonderful words. And this is the image that we would like to draw for the next generation. This is the task that each and every one of us has. We should do it together. So I would like to invite everyone to help us with our future projects. So this brings us to the end of the official part of presentation of our book. All speakers are available for any questions the press might have. My proposal is to take questions in a group. Those journalists who would like to pose a question, please raise your hand. When you have the floor for speaking, switch on your camera and, of course, switch on your microphone. And then we will give the floor to our guests.
Imamo kakšno vprašanje, ker nekaj novinarjev vidim.
Are there any questions? Because I see a number of journalists taking part in this event.
Kolikor ni vprašanj, bi mogoče...
Well, should there be no questions, I would once again like to thank all contributing authors. I should also mention Mrs. Anja Fortuna, the president of the Youth Forum of Slovenia, Marko Vedrich, an investigative journalist, for his contribution. Before we close, oh yes, and I see Dr. Drago Čepar raising his hand. He has been the one who has provided the initial idea to start a project on closing the staffing gap. And this was the basis for our project presented here today. Drago, the floor is yours.
Ne slišimo.
We can't hear you, unfortunately.
Ne
We
slišimo.
can't hear the speaker. We can't hear the speaker. The microphone seems to be off. Well, perhaps we give the floor once again to Mrs. Hermans, who also raised her hand. And then comes Mr. Čepar. Mrs. Hermans, the floor is yours again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One question that I would raise here is, can someone tell me something about the digital access of older persons to computer, to all aspects of the digital world at this moment? I say it because it seemed in this COVID-19 pandemic a real problem. In this way, in the whole of Europe, in several long-term care facilities, it was not possible to pay visit, to go and to visit older persons, and so older residents. And then they said they can do it in a digital way. They can make contacts in a digital way and so on. But I think that when people are not used to it, that this digital communication can't replace real contact. So I ask myself, are people used to it? How can they use it? Please tell me something. I would be glad to hear something about it.
Hvala lepa za vprašanje. Verjamem, da
Thank you very much for the floor. I believe our MEP, Mr. Bogovic, will be able to answer your question, so I will give him the floor without further ado. Thank you, Primož. Thank you, Mrs. Hermans. You have partly answered this question, and you have raised the important questions, actually. Firstly, we need access to the infrastructure, to the signals, to high-quality broadband. And secondly, we need digital literacy. We need the skills. Now, in Slovenia, and also here, we have representatives of the National Federation of Pensioners Association. And this organization has been very good in promoting and developing IT literacy among our senior citizens. And today, it has become clear that we need broadband everywhere, including in rural areas. We need broadband for young people to learn, for the elderly to communicate with each other. And we have seen cases where in residence homes, there were volunteers helping the residents get into contact via Skype or Zoom or any other tools with their relatives. Here, we see, or let me put it this way, you have touched upon a very interesting topic, and we need to make sure we find solutions to, firstly, provide the necessary infrastructure, including broadband networks, and secondly, to improve the elderly's skills, computer literacy. And this might be a positive consequence of the COVID crisis. There have been programs in residential homes of helping the elderly use digital tools to get into contact with their families.
Zdaj pa mislim,
Thank you
da
very much. And I believe we now have Mr. Čepar with the audio too, so I will invite him to pose his question.
ja, zdaj se pa slišimo, drago.
Yes, we can hear you now, but good afternoon, everyone in Slovenia and elsewhere. Those of you who do not know me, my name is Drago Čepar, and most of you in Slovenia have known me. However, I have changed a little bit because I have not been paying a visit to the hairdressers. I am compliant with the lockdown restrictions. Anyway, thank you very much for organizing this event. First of all, I would like to commend you on presenting this book, and I will also speak about the future. Congratulations to all participants and to both institutes, INAC and the Martens Center. In these very difficult circumstances, they have managed to prepare this entire event, to publish the book, and now to present this book. Congratulations. The Anton Korošec Institute deserves congratulations for working so hard for several years in this area. In 2017, we had a roundtable discussion where we talked about, well, we heard the presentation of the government about the thousands of migrants moving into Slovenia. The figures were increasing on an annual basis. The Institute responded also last year with a roundtable discussion to staffing gap in Slovenia. Now, in Slovenia, we are seeing a lack of human resources. We have also prepared on that occasion a publication which is released on INAC's website. We write there that Slovenia is confronted with two very important tasks. Firstly, increasing the birth rate, and secondly, ensuring a sufficient number of working age people for the economy and the nation to survive until 2045. The organizers of the then round-table discussion announced a second step to this discussion to be held on the 30th of January. They have lived up to their pledges despite all the pandemic restrictions. The event we had in Ankara improved the international dimension. We were listening to high-level guests from other countries. We exchanged experience between or about different countries. We listened to a presentation about the plans of our own government. We heard how Germany assessed and published data about their staffing gap at the national level. We also discussed the role of automation, how robots could, in certain circumstances, replace some human resources. The roundtable discussion we had a year ago also presented several recommendations. Now, to conclude, I will briefly touch upon what I wish for the future. I wish to the Institute to keep the momentum going, be brave, be professional, and keep on the good work. It would be worthwhile to also work at the national level and prepare statistical data and predictions about the gaps we should count with in the next decades. Dr. Umek spoke about robots, about robot-based automation, and he provided some figures. We should also have figures with respect to other measures such as migrations, immigration, selective immigration policies, how these measures could decrease the staffing gap, and what would be the economic and social repercussions. I'm speaking here about economy contraction, a loss of fiscal income, in case we are unable to close this staffing gap. I see this as a continuation of what Dr. Umek touched upon in his intervention. We should also make sure that this abundance of excellent messages coming from various expert discussions get to our politicians. And last but not least, we should also work on the EU level initiatives. The Croatian HDZ at one of its last conventions spoke about the human challenges in the rural areas. Problems in Slovenia are quite similar. And I think solutions or proposals as to the future should be quite similar as those in Croatia. There are 5 billion euros foreseen for Slovenia's recovery. Part of this money should go into family policies. Last but not least, I should once again reiterate that I'm very happy to be listening to this presentation today. One thing is sure, we need specific and immediate actions. We are on a Titanic. There's no use going backwards once you already see the iceberg. Maybe a boat or two might avoid and pass by the iceberg, but not the entire ship. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Drago Čepar, for these thoughts, for the food for thought for the future. And now my question is, if any of the present journalists, guests, has any further questions? I can see that Mr. Vitomir Bric has raised his hand. Yes, good afternoon, and thank you to all the presenters for your contribution. I have a general question, and I don't know who could answer it. Perhaps Anne Hermans or maybe someone else. So what do you think about seniors on farm? Some people, some elderly people are moving from the countryside, from rural areas into towns. But there is also a possibility for several generations to live together on a farm and for the elderly to wait for the end of their lives there. So what are your views on that? Thank you. Thank you very much for this question. Perhaps Mrs. Anne Hermans, as the question was addressed to her.
Yes, I can say some words about it, but I think that here are more experienced people to speak about it than I am myself. But I think that in several countries at this moment there are all kinds of new visions and all kinds of experiments. I don't like the word experiment in this case, but more generations together. How can more generations live together? Also in some university cities, we have houses where students and older people can live together, where they have a room and some facilities, and where younger people, students, don't pay for their accommodation because they are helping some hours a week older peoples or handicapped peoples and so on. I think that in this way there are possibilities. Also people living on farms, like you say, that's a totally other situation than students and young people and older people together, but there are possibilities. And I think that in some cases, and we see it already in some care houses for people with dementia, some farms and the possibility to have contact with also animals and plants and do some little works is very, very helpful in their process, and to stay in contact with nature and to stay in contact with each other and so on. So I think that it's worth to try out and to see what's possible. And I just say a last word. When you say we have we have to start something, we don't have to wait and to wait. I was thinking also about the following. I think in some months, Slovenia has the presidency of the European Union's Council. So please, this is an opportunity. Germany, it's such a big country, but they have also in their council conclusions and so on, they have insert some ideas on what about aging, what about digitalization and so on. So, and when you know it already at this time and you can work together on it, so I should say take the opportunity so that you can use also this coming half a year of presidency of the European Union to voice what you need and how you see the opportunity to organize something on older people. Thank you very much. And I think that some people like Mr. Bogovic know more about your initiatives.
Hvala lepa, gospa Ann Hermans.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ann Hermans. Perhaps Mr. Bogovic, yeah, who has been active in this area for quite a long time. Yes, thank you very much for giving me the floor, and thank you very much for this question. Mrs. Hermans has already given some answers, but I would like to supplement it a little bit because I agree with what she has said. In Europe and in the common agricultural policy, the new one, which is now in the final phase of the trialogue, also includes elements of aging population and in relation to farms. Because in particular in Eastern Europe, we have large agricultural areas that are now remaining empty, and now we need to ask ourselves what we can do about them. One of the measures that wish to promote the renewal of generations on the farms. There's a measure within CAP called young farmer, young farm owner, trying to be an incentive for young people to stay on the farm, because 1/3 of European farms or agricultural holdings have owners who are 65 years old and older. But only some 36% of young people owning the farms are young people. There is a problem, however, with grants that were received by previous generations, but then they needed to return them. And there is a gray zone for those who are aged 50 or around 60, but are not eligible to any grants or funds from the European Union, because there are for the elderly and there are for the young, but not for them. So we will need to address this issue as well. I myself worked hard on trying to resolve the social issues in those gray areas, and we need to pay more attention to it in the future. Farms and rural areas as spaces for long-term care represent an area where there is a lot of opportunity with smart villages, smart silver villages, with a combination of generations. There are projects in the field with which we are trying to focus on the elderly who should stay at home on farms, and that they will be supported at their home through physiotherapy, through healthcare, and then they should slowly and gradually move towards, let's say, institutionalized care in the homes for the elderly, shelter housing, and so on. And we believe we can provide that. Thank you for the suggestion that we should focus on that during our presidency. And I'm pleased to say that on the 1st of October at Castle Reichenburg, there will be an event within the scope of our presidency where Mrs. Dubravka Šuica, Vice President of the European Commission for Democracy and Demography, she has confirmed her attendance, her participation in this event in Slovenia. And we are organizing it in cooperation with the Slovenian Ministry of Agriculture, with the Ministry of Family and Social Affairs. And so we are going to pay special attention to long-term care, mobility in the countryside, in rural areas. So this event will be dedicated to smart villages in which long-term care is one of the basic branches in this project.
Thank you very much for this great news. Primož, the first one to confirm attendance at this event was Monika Kirbiš-Rojs and her minister. So those who manage EU funds flowing into Slovenia have confirmed their participation. Monika, welcome to my municipality on the 1st of October. Thank you very much. Great news, interesting news, and I'm sure we are going to closely follow this event. Given that there are no further questions, I would like to thank cordially everyone who has contributed to this publication, who were with us in Ankara at that conference. Mr. Boteri would like the floor. Good evening. Now, I've been listening to Mr. Bogovic, and it seems that tourism in the so-called Zidanica cottages in Slovenia has come to a standstill. Some farms have been developing, offering hospitality services in their traditional Zidanica cottages, but the bureaucracy, the paperwork here is so immense. Do you have any idea as to how we could accelerate this? Thank you. Did I understand correctly that this question is for me? Yes. tourism in countryside definitely is part of the smart villages concept, starting with agriculture, precise agriculture, and then, of course, supplementary activities on the farm are very important, and that includes offering services to tourism based on homemade, homegrown products, offering capacities in vineyards, houses. I know of that because I come from a wine growing region, and I agree completely with you. In the past, the red tape, this scope of paperwork was even bigger than is the case today. I know firsthand because I was a mayor in the past too. Today, the administrative procedures have been streamlined partly. What we are working on within the smart village projects, we have come with an idea of dislocated hotels, where in a village you can have various facilities, houses, rural area cottages, vineyard houses that offer in a coordinated way services in the so-called dislocated hotel services. Yes, I think there is a great potential here.
Hvala lepa. Še kakšno vprašanje?
Thank you very much for this reply. Any other question, perhaps? I'm looking at everyone here on the screen. I do not see any hand raised. Marian? I would reply to Mr. Boteri's intervention. When I was at the agricultural school in Novo Mesto, we carried out a project that is very much connected with the truth in Slovenia and in the European Union. The bureaucracy of everything we need to do is killing us. First of all, we set up a legislative framework, and then we add on and on and on new regulations. Just the other day, I talked to the owner of a small shop, and they said, we have had in the recent months 4 different inspection services. My God, a small shop and so many different checkups. What we need to do is we need to fight this overgrowing of bureaucracy, because this will kill us. The time will simply win over us. If someone wants to sell, say, 5 kilograms of carrots today, first of all, they need to pay 600 euros for a license of selling carrots at their own farm. This is the level of bureaucracy in our country. And I said to myself, when we enter the parliament, our first and foremost priority will be a radical removal of administrative burden. We need to cut this big grass of superfluous laws, because it's simply not sustainable. The Japanese and all other economies are going to win over us. Why? Because our legal structures are so burdening for the small farmer. If a small farmer wants to offer their house as a small hotel or their homegrown produce, we should support them in that, not giving them additional paperwork jobs. Thank you very much for this contribution. I think we have now exhausted the questions and replies we have had. Bureaucracy, we know what it is. Bureaucracy is something that is draining us of our time, because you need to spend time on doing the things that are not useful for you. But let us close on a more positive note. Thank you very much to everyone who has participated in this event today. I would also like to thank Jure, Alenka, our interpreters, Veronica and Špela, and all others who have supported us in organizing this event today. And a special thanks goes to Mrs. Ann Hermans, the President of the European Seniors Union, and to Tommy Huhtanen, the Executive Director of the Martens Center. In the very end, I would also like to mention or touch upon the initiative mentioned by the President of the Slovenian People's Party. You need to start with a small step. I come from a big family, and I was not a model of demographic issues, I must say. However, when we got this idea about doing this project, I started to think about the demographic challenge in a more intensive way. We have applied with the Martens Center with 2 additional projects, so I can promise you we are going to keep working on this area. The last but not least, the floor goes to my colleague, Susanna Lara Krause, who was the project manager of this demographic changes project and the editor of our publication. Susanna, the floor goes to you.
Spoštovani vsi prisotni, najlepša.
Dear participants, good afternoon to everyone present here, and thank you for this really nice afternoon that really flew by fast. I feel at home almost in your company. A lot has been said today. A lot of issues are still open, and I'm sincerely looking forward to further discussion. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all participants, to all speakers, authors, Anja Fortuna, Boštjan Vidrich, and Boštjan Furlan. And thank you also to our director, Primož Jelševar, to entrust me with the task of managing, of leading the project of this publication. And thank you to all of you who worked hard with us, the proofreaders, translators, designers, and printers. Thank you for participating, to the guests, and especially to Mrs. Ann Hermans, the President of the European Seniors Union. And I would also like to extend my thanks to the media. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the launching of our publication on this very burning topic. It is not pleasant to talk about that it's not about having to have more children, that we will need to work on that, but we need to talk about it here and now and as loudly as possible. I'm looking forward to further cooperation, to future projects, and I'm certainly looking forward to the day when we can meet live in person and cheer to our future projects and future successes. Let's hope this will be soon.
Lahko noč.
Thank you very much and bye-bye.
Thank you, hvala.
Adijo, srečno. Hvala tudi prevajalkama, ki sta pomagala, da smo se razumeli vsi skupaj. Tako da lep pozdrav.
Thank you also as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.